Hi, my name is Gudrun from GE Designs, and welcome to our Stella Quilt Along. This is the first quilt along we're conducting out of my brand new book, Stripology Mixology. And I picked this quilt because it's really simple to make, even though it doesn't really look like it, and it's could be done for the holidays, and we're conducting this in December. I know a lot of you have maybe little time to sew, but this is a perfect one to get going, to kind of sneak into your sewing room and get some therapy in the holiday stress. So let me show you what you need for this quilt. So first of all, we need the book, and you will find the Stella pattern on page 78. I highly recommend getting some ruler stickers. We will get back to that, how we use those when we're cutting. And then I recommend using the Stripology Squared ruler for this quilt. You can use the original Stripology ruler or regular rulers, and I will show you how to do that. And but the squared works really well, especially when we get to the squaring up part. As far as yardage, you will find that in the book. The quilt uses all 10-inch squares, so it's written for 5 different sizes. So you will need, as stated in the pattern, dark squares and light squares. So I have pulled my color selection here, and this is just an example. Of course, you can make this any way you want. And let's look at the quilt behind me that is in the book. That is the original. So I used holiday fabrics for this quilt, and I just used scrappy lights and scrappy darks, just what I had in that layer cake pack that I used. But what you want in this case, you want to have a contrast between your darks and your lights so that your stars will show up. And we will be making large block like this, where we mirror the darks either on the outside or on the inside for the star. So in that case, you want those things to contrast well enough, either with value or with color, so that your stars will stand out. So let's check out my fabrics here. So I chose to use this fabric line mostly that's called Weather Permitting by Janet Claire from Moda. I love all the blues and kind of the creamy lights in this line. Now, of course, this is one layer cake pack. I intend to make the lap size, which takes 48 total squares, 24 darks and 24 lights. So I split it up. I pulled out all my blues and then the lights, and of course I didn't have enough lights because there's only 42 squares in the line. There were also 2 kind of mustard colored squares in the line, which I thought would kind of be an odd man out, so I pulled those out right away. And then there were 2 really kind of dark navy, which kind of like almost a solid, and I felt like they were going to be too harsh with everything else, so I pulled those out as well. So then I'm ending up with 24 of the blues, and then I just found other kind of creamy tones of backgrounds that would play well with a line and added them to the mix. So don't be afraid to mix in different things from a different fabric line, even though you're using mostly singular line. So if we look at my fabrics, obviously this is going to be a good contrast between a light and a dark. But if you're not so sure on value, for example, if your dark colors are multiple different colors, what I always recommend, once you have your fabric pulled and you think you're good with it, take a picture of it and turn it into black and white, because then you will really see the value of the colors. You will see if something stands out in your darks too much, and then you will also see if one of those lights is not reading as a light. So always do that before you check anything else. Now there's a different way to get that contrast between light and a dark. It doesn't have to be a light and a dark. It could be a medium, just a group of mediums and a group of darks. Just as long as there is contrast, you'll see those stars. But you can also do that with just having 2 different colors. They might be the same value, but if you, for example, use a green and a yellow or a green and a red, as long as those 2 colors stand out from each other, you'll be fine. You'll have a very colorful quilt, but just with very distinct stars and background for each block. I also wanted to talk about the size. If any of those 5 sizes don't work for you, you can easily make this quilt larger, because we're just making the same block. This full block ends up being 17 inches. So add that up in your head and figure out how big you want your quilt And how to figure out how much more yardage you need is that each full block just takes 4 squares. So you always need, of course, 4 of dark and 4 of light. So you always kind of have to add it by 2s, the blocks by 2s when you're doing the quilt. Okay, so play with that. Okay, let's study my fabric selection. So now I'm breaking this down. My quilt is obviously going to be kind of a blue and cream quilt, but you will notice that there are some very light blues, there's some medium blues, and there are some dark blues. Now in this case, I could just mix them all up in the quilt and kind of have all the blocks the same, but I'm not sure how that's going to look until I have my blocks done, and that is still something I might do. But in case I don't want to do that, I want to group the light blues together, I made sure that I have them in sets of 4. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 lights, another set of 4 lights, and then I have a set of 4 mediums, 2 sets of 4 mediums, and then I have 2 sets of kind of dark navies. So it's always in sets of 4 if you think about the block and whole. So if you're thinking that you want to group colors together, make sure you have these in groups of 4. You will notice that this print, these two are kind of busy compared to my other prints. And that's something I might consider kind of leaving out as I work and as I come to it. But in this case, I think I might throw them in there. But as you will notice, I have these 4 that are kind of busier, and here are another 4 with that light blue print that are busier. So I can always group them together if I wanted to do that too. Okay, so let's get to talking about if you have a directional print. So for example, this one is a directional print. So it's supposed to be faced one way, and especially if you have novelty fabrics. Now I wouldn't mind if this one being tossed around any different direction in my quilt, but let's say you have a novelty quilt and it's, you know, very specific up and down and needs to be positioned like that in the quilt, and you can definitely do that. So let's look at our quilt, because this block gets turned every which way. You'll see if you want your directional print to always be facing this way, whether it's here, 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 or here in a block, if you have a lot of those, what you want to make sure when we get to the cutting is the positioning of the cutting. And I will show you that when we get to that. So let's pull our fabric aside and get ready to cut these blocks. So I like to stack my fabric. So I am just going to stack a few darks. So I'll take my darks. I'll take 4 of those. And if you are using just a regular 45mm cutter, I kind of recommend not cutting more layers than 4 to 6 layers of fabric at a time. So I'm going to cut 4. I'm going to just stack these right side up. Now before you start cutting, you want to give your squares, especially if you're using a pre-cut, you want to give your squares a good press with the steam iron. And since we are going to be cutting on the bias, it's always a good idea to maybe put a little best press or a little bit of starch on your, fabrics, because that is going to keep them more stable. Now, if you didn't do that or don't want to do that, no big deal. This is just the one seam, and we're going to square it up in the end, so it's not a big deal. So here's what I was talking about with a directional fabric. If you always want your fabrics to be turned a certain way, right way up in the quilt, you want to make sure that if these 4 were all directional, I want to make sure that I'm going to put this one on top so you understand me. One of them is turned this way, so right side up, and then the second one will be turned 90 degrees, third one 90 degrees, and the fourth one 90 degrees. So you have all 4 different directions as you cut, so then when the block is done, you'll be able to position them so that they will all be correct. Now then we're going to take our ruler. We have this stacked up, and I recommend when I'm doing a lot of cutting of the same measurements, I use my ruler stickers to mark up my ruler. Now the pattern will tell you exactly where to position those, so I have them just marked right here, because now I can use this arrow on the bottom corner of my block, my bottom left corner, and then this arrow will just point to the top right corner here. And then I have one more arrow down here, I'll show you, that is going to mark the slit I'm going to cut through. So this is just makes it so easy to line things up, and then all I have to do is go into my slit that I marked and make my cut, like so. So you can actually go ahead and cut all your darks this way, and then all of your lights. And I'm just going to cut a few lights here as well. So we'll do 4 again. And because I want to show you how to do this with the original ruler. And it's a little bit different because we know the square ruler has a little bit longer slits because it's designed to trim blocks up to 12.5 inches. So make sure you stack these up so that they are even. And one more. And then we're going to bring that other ruler over here. So now instead of using that bottom left corner of the 0 on the squared ruler, I'm going to use the total edge of the ruler here and the 0 slit. I have that marked way on the bottom to put on my bottom left corner of the block. And then I have the top one marked, and then I'm going to make my cut. So you can easily use the big ruler for the same thing. Now, if you don't have either of the Stripology rulers, you can use a regular ruler, and there are instructions in the book to show you how to do that. And that will just show you to put 2 marks. I have it marked with a pen here. You probably don't see it very well, but you have a certain distance from the corner, and you make a mark with a pen, and also on the other side. And then all you have to do is place any ruler on those 2 markings and make your cut across, and you cut that little wedge off, the triangle off of the unit. So now we have, once you have all your lights and all your darks, that is really all we're going to be doing today, because the next step in our quilt along, I want to give you instructions on how to sew these together. So have all your darks, all your lights, or however you're going to have your fabrics. Prep them with an iron and a little bit of starch, and then you're going to cut them all. The quilt along is going to be taking place both on my website, and if you don't have the book or rulers, you can find that on my website. And there's a link there called blog. So we will be putting up blog posts with the quilt along. But also, it's going to be happening in my Facebook group called Gudrun's Quilt Crew. So please join it. It's a closed group. And the next step will be on December 7th, 2018, during our Facebook Friday. It's a Facebook Live session that I will have every week until the finish of the quilt along. So on December 7th, I'm going to give you tips on sewing these units together, and we're going to sew all our blocks together. The third step will be December 14th, where we'll be trimming our blocks. And then the finishing will be on December 21st, where we'll put it all together, and I give you some good tips on laying your quilt out and getting those blocks sewn together. So I hope you join me. If you're not ready to do this in December, it's okay. You can always go back to it. But that's all for today, and I'll see you soon.